Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Haley. I'm 20 years old. I love to bake, so I'm a lover of music and love all things dinosaurs. One thing you probably would not have guessed just by looking at me is that I also have a chronic illness. I have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome and gastroparesis. Now, I know what you're thinking. Haley, what the heck is that? What does that mean? When I was first diagnosed, it took me a bit to understand just exactly what it meant and what they were. So let's get into it. What are these conditions and how do they affect me? Let's start off with POTS, or Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia syndrome. It's a form of dysautonomia, and this means there's a malfunction of your autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system is responsible for all the involuntary motions in your body. So digestion, breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, things like that. So you can imagine the problems you can have when your autonomic nervous system is not functioning properly. POTS itself is characterized by the increase in heart rate upon change in position. It is often associated with fainting, but it can present itself in other ways. Some symptoms that I experience on a daily basis include high and low blood pressure, high and low heart rate, abdominal pain, brain fog, insomnia, chest pain, nausea, temperature dysregulation. So I have a hard time controlling how hot I get or how cold I get. The list goes on. There are so many other symptoms that an individual can experience with a condition like this. I deal with these symptoms rather often. I was diagnosed with a tilt table test, and this is basically a test in a controlled environment that can track how your heart rate and how your blood pressure change in correlation with position. So they put you on this table and then they'll tilt you and they'll track just how high your heart rate gets, how high your blood pressure gets, or how low it gets, just to see how your body reacts to the change in position. One symptom that led me to another diagnosis is abdominal pain. After eating, I would get awful stomach pain, nausea, vomiting. My doctor treating my POTS has a lot of experience dealing with individuals who also have gastroparesis and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is another condition that I also have. So when he noticed that I was having abdominal pain and began losing weight, he made the connection and referred me to a gastroenterologist who later diagnosed me with gastroparesis. Gastroparesis is a motility disorder affecting the muscles of the stomach and prevents the stomach from properly emptying. So in a person with gastroparesis, in simple terms, there is slow movement, or in some cases where your stomach does not function. The slow movement of the stomach can bring some not so pleasant symptoms along with it. Some of the symptoms that I personally experience are nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, bloating, constipation, feeling full. So after I take like a few bites of dinner, my stomach will become really bloated and I would just feel really full, like I just ate a Thanksgiving dinner. It's the best way that I know how to describe the feeling of fullness. And my blood sugar has also been affected. So because my stomach is not properly emptying, I can sometimes have episodes of low blood sugar, hypoglycemia. As you can imagine, eating with a condition like this can become rather difficult. Sometimes it can lead to malnutrition and weight loss. I was diagnosed with a gastric emptying scan. Gastric emptying scan is where they give you radioactive eggs to eat and toast, and then they will periodically take x-rays of you to see just how fast or how slow your stomach is emptying. Now let's talk treatment options. First, I would like to point out that not everyone's experience with chronic illness or with these conditions in particular will be the same for each individual going through them. What may work for one person may not necessarily work for another person. Your experiences with the condition you are going through is completely valid, whether you have a diagnosis or not. I know for me, when I was going through these things, it took me a long time to find a knowledgeable doctor to actually diagnose me with the things that I was going through. And I went through a period of time where I just felt like it was all in my head. And it was so frustrating feeling like there wasn't actually anything wrong with me. But when I got the diagnosis, it ended up being an extremely validating experience. If you aren't diagnosed, your experiences are valid and what you are experiencing is valid. I would also like to point out that I am not a doctor and I can only discuss the things that I have personally experienced. So if you have questions or concerns about any of the things brought up in this conversation, make sure to reach out to your doctor and ask them questions. As of now, for both conditions, there are no cures, and the treatment associated with these conditions is mostly based on symptom management. For POTS, the first line of action is usually a mixture of diet changes, hydration, and compression socks. So compression socks are basically like leggings you put on your legs to help with blood flow, because in POTS patients, a lot of the times blood pooling is something that happens where all the blood rushes to your feet, and so it has a hard time circulating all throughout your body, causing an individual to feel lightheaded and experience some of the symptoms associated with POTS. So wearing compression stockings may help alleviate some of these symptoms as well. Diet and hydration is another option for those experiencing these symptoms. So increasing salt into your diet, staying properly hydrated. One way I do this is by taking salt tablets and by drinking electrolyte drinks, so like Gatorade, Liquid IV, things like that. Medications and other therapies are available for these conditions. Fludrocortisone, beta blockers, midodrine, mestinon are just a couple of examples of medications that can help in the management of these symptoms and of this condition. In more severe cases, IV hydration can be used for individuals with POTS. Now let's move on to gastroparesis. Similar to POTS, changes in your diet can help. It is not a cure-all, but it is one way to help alleviate your symptoms. So eating smaller, more frequent meals, low fat, low fiber are just a few examples of diet changes that you can try out. For me, I noticed that when I was diagnosed, cutting out things like gluten and dairy were really huge triggers for some of my symptoms. And so I ended up changing my diet to help in those regards. Some people tolerate liquids better than solids, so eating soup or pureed foods may be beneficial. So there are also medications out there that can also help. These medications include erythromycin and Reglan. Erythromycin and Reglan. These medications help to stimulate the stomach muscles and to help the stomach to contract, allowing for the digestion of food to take place. Some individuals I have spoken to have found the medication domperidone to be helpful in their management. It is not an FDA-approved medication, but you can get it through an access program. While it's a very helpful medication, it takes a lot of hoops to jump through to actually get the medication to you. If nutrition becomes an issue, more specifically malnutrition, a feeding tube may be placed in order to help in the management of your symptoms. There are many different types of feeding tubes, and there's many different reasons to get a feeding tube. Just because you have gastroparesis does not necessarily mean you can't eat by mouth. I have a friend who has a feeding tube and she's able to eat her safe food still. Each feeding tube serves a different purpose, but at the end of the day, feeding tubes can provide adequate nutrition for those who are unable to receive it. Symptoms can come in waves. There will be good days where you have low symptoms, and then there are flare days where your symptoms become more noticeable. I hope that sharing these thoughts helped you to understand a bit more about these conditions. Knowledge is power, and the more awareness I spread, the better, as more treatments and more medications and more options will become available to those affected with conditions like mine. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe and like it. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions for me. Each and every one of you, good vibes. Peace, love. Bye.